Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Thursday edition of Take 5. I hope you're having a great day today so far. This week on Take 5, we are talking about what has become commonly known in the church as Holy Week. This has to do with the things that Jesus did and said his last week on earth before his death, burial, and resurrection. Now, we know they had to be some pretty important things because, number one, the Bible lists them for us, and secondly, it was his last week. So you know, if this is my last week, I'm gonna do the most important and say the most important things. Thursday was a big day for Jesus. This actually would be the day right before his crucifixion. This is the last day and night that he's going to be alive before he is killed. This was a big day for him, and so many things happened on Thursday that we don't really have time to talk about all of them in detail. However, I do want to list as many of these events as we can that transpired in his life because this was the last day of his life. Now, if you knew that you had one day left to live, what would you do? You ever thought about that? I don't know, perhaps you would eat a good meal. Perhaps you would have a visit with close family and friends, or maybe do something spontaneous like go skydiving or something like that. Jesus knew this was his last day, and he chose to spend it with his disciples, pouring into them and encouraging them. I'm going to look at the things that he did there with his disciples on his last day before his death. First of all, he celebrated Passover with them. Now, the Passover meal was to commemorate the first Passover that took place when God delivered Israel from the bondage of slavery to Egypt. Jesus sat around the table with his disciples, memorializing all the lambs that had died and all the blood that had been shed so Israel could be free. And he revealed to them that they wouldn't need that anymore, that he would be the last Passover lamb that would ever need to be slain. This final sacrifice of himself would be sufficient. I don't know if the disciples knew the significance when John the Baptist announced him as the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world or not, but they know now because he is going to be the last lamb ever slain. He shares this Passover meal, we call it communion, with them, and he takes the bread and he breaks it and he passes it around and he said, "This is my body that's broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me." He takes the cup and he passes it around and he says, "This is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." All of this, he did this on his last day. He did it for them. Secondly, he washed their feet as an example of servanthood. If there's one final lesson that Jesus could leave his disciples, it would be to remind them of their call to servanthood. He got up after the Passover meal, girded himself with a towel, and went around and washed the disciples' feet. They should have washed his feet. He was worthy of that, but he said, "I didn't come to be served. I came to be a servant," and that's the lesson he wanted to lead them. He said, "No servant's greater than his master, nor messenger greater than the one that sent him. If I did it," he said, "you should serve one another in the same manner." Thirdly, he prayed over the disciples. John chapter 13 through 17 reveals all that Jesus shared and prayed and did to encourage them after he left. In chapter 17, verse 14, he said, "I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they're not of the world no more than I am." He said to the Father, "My prayer is that you don't take them out of the world, but protect them while they're in it. And my prayer's not for them alone, but for all of those that will believe." Do you know the last day of Jesus' life, friend? He prayed for you and me. And then fourthly, he took them with him as he went into the Garden of Gethsemane to pray for strength to endure the most horrific night of his life. Now, everything that Jesus had done up until this point on Thursday had been to benefit the disciples. Everything that he had done was for their benefit. And he knew what he was about to face, and he still preferred them over himself. And now in his most trying moment, they all, one by one, began to let him down. He prays in that garden for the strength, and while he prays, his disciples sleeps. And then Judas shows up, one of his own, and betrays him. He washed his feet and served him communion that same night, and now he betrays him. Soon all the disciples run away in fear. Peter denies him and swears and curses with an oath and says, "I never knew this man," all alone that night. Jesus faced the armed crowd that came to arrest him. He submitted to their violence, and he walked off in the darkest night that anyone would ever face, to be tried and tested, to be beaten and brutalized, to drink the cup given him by his Father. All of this so that the world might be saved. He did all this on the last Thursday of his life. Well, hey, our time's come and gone. I hope you have a great rest of your day today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow on Friday's edition of Take 5. Until then, God bless you. Don't ever forget what He did for you. Have a great day.